Hey guys, welcome to the Neglected Podcast. This podcast is not to change your mind, but to invite you into somebody else's narrative. This is a podcast to give a voice to the neglected. It is also an opportunity for all of us to engage.
Hi, Neglected Podcast listeners. I'm your host, Jovanna Javis, and I have a special guest here, Alia. Say hi.
Hey, how are you?
So I'm very excited to have her here with me today. So actually, this is our first time being in a room together, so I'm very excited about that. But we did talk over the phone. I saw your testimony video from your church, Hope City Church, used to be Impact Church. And I was just really drawn to your story. You articulated like the things that you've experienced very well, and I reached out to you and you said yes. So I really appreciate you saying yes to being a guest today. And so let's just go ahead and start with our conversation. So I would like to just hear from you about your background. Where are you from? Your people, those things.
Okay. I am from Savannah, Georgia. I've been born and raised here in Savannah, 31 years old. My mom had me when she was 15. So I have a very young mom. Mm-hmm. It's pretty challenging, but it's a really fun thing because it's almost like having a sister. And then my dad, he's not from here. He lives in Atlanta. But I would say growing up as a child, it was quite challenging. I was a very unique child. So as I grew older, I think I began to learn how to embrace my differences that helped me make a difference in the community. Mm-hmm. But I would say definitely, most importantly, I graduated from Jenkins High School, 2007, and pretty much like growing up, I was in the hair industry, so I'm a master cosmetologist. So I help serve women, men, and children all over Savannah and Pooler. Help them embrace their natural hair. But that's pretty much me.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So I would love to start at childhood for you. And so you mentioned that your mom was 15 when she had you. How old was your dad?
My dad, I believe he was 18.
Okay, so you had really young parents. So what was that like for you growing up with parents that were really young?
I would say it was okay. One thing about my mom, she was like the type of woman that was independent. Mm-hmm. So she made sure that she went out and worked and did everything that she could to provide for us as children. And because I saw that drive, I believe that would allow me to take a lot of that on as a woman. Especially like being very ambitious, going after the things that I know that I want. She showed me pretty much like if you don't go out after what you want, nobody's going to give it to you. So I'm definitely grateful to see that example, to be able to help me position myself as a woman. But I would say too, on the other half of with my father wasn't in my life during my childhood, but one thing, I don't know what it was. I've always had faith since I was a young child, and I would always believe that God was going to bring my father in my life, and I find it so crazy how God just did just that. He started showing up a lot when I was about 17 years old, right when I was getting ready to graduate from high school. And I want to say around my 20s, early 20s, he finally showed up for good. And I would say it was nobody but God. Yeah. Our relationship is still to a place where it's growing and evolving, but I am so thankful that God honored my prayers to, bring my father back in my life, because it was something that I was missing as a woman that I needed as an adult. I was missing as a child, that I needed as a woman, of who I was becoming. So it is definitely a blessing to have my father in my life at this time.
Yeah, what was it like for you at 17 when your dad came back into your life?
Honestly, I was nervous.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
I was very nervous. Because I heard so much about my father, but I had no clue if I was going to get that experience from what others said. So I was very nervous. I didn't know what it was going to be like. And I can say as we continue to spend time together, trust was built because it wasn't easy in the beginning.
No, I'm sure, yeah.
But trust was built. And I think still to this day, we're learning each other because we're constantly evolving. And I know as a woman, having her father in her life is different than a child needing their father. So I think he came in and he's learning how to be that woman father that I need right now in my life. So, but like I said, it's a day by day trusting God process where we're learning to build this relationship together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I would love to ask, like, if you have any insight into when you bring up that it's a process of building a relationship, because like who a child needs is different than who an adult needs. And I would imagine, like, I don't have children, but I would imagine that evolution of like parenting your child is very different than parenting an adult, or being like towing those different lines. Yeah. And so what would you say the process of building that trust has been like? Like, what would you say that is?
Okay, I would honestly say it was not easy. Because one thing that I realized when my father came into my life was there was a part of me that was this little girl still in me. Although I was older, but I feel like there was a little girl inside of me still crying for her father. But that satisfaction never got fulfilled. Yeah. There was a place where I realized that the things that I was wanting my father to do, or wanting him to actually, like, I wanted him to be there in a way that he wasn't able to. And I had to get healed within my Heavenly Father to know that that little girl had to raise up. And I think that was like a breaking, but that was the breaking place for our relationship, but also the place where God was restoring and building, because that's when we began to realize that the years that was lost are gone. Yeah. But we all can heal and grow and develop together. So I can definitely say that was a part of building the trust, where we really had to be authentic with where we were in life, and recognizing where we had to set boundaries, and also recognizing what we needed in order for this relationship to grow.
No, I love that you just brought that up, because I think that being aware is just so important, because like what you're speaking to is being aware of the fact that at that point there was a piece of you that was asking a question that couldn't be answered. You were asking for something that couldn't be fulfilled. And so being able to acknowledge that and heal that part of you, that's huge, because I do think that it is, reconciling a relationship is complicated because there's a lot of moving pieces, but there is an internal piece to work through. And so, no, thank you for bringing that insight. Yes. Something else that you mentioned is that you were a unique child. Mm-hmm. And so you spoke of like how for your mom was a very ambitious woman and modeled that for you. But then you mentioned that you were a unique child. In what ways were you unique?
I was very unique as a child. I got diagnosed with loss of hearing at the age of 4. And at the time, when my mom, she found out that I was losing my hearing. She said that I had a really bad ear infection. So that's what made her take me to the emergency room, and they mentioned that I was diagnosed with short of hearing. So she did everything that she could possibly do to take me to the doctor. They recommended hearing aids, and they also said that I would pretty much be deaf the older I get. So that kind of like really made my mom stay on top of it. She did everything she could. She allowed me to, she invested and got the hearing aids. And when she did that, I was going to therapists to, start speech therapists. Speech therapy. And then also, she did everything she could. So, but the thing about it was, as a child, I was excited about my journey. It was something new, it was different. And the doctors, they made it really fun for me because they allowed me to choose what color I wanted them to be. So, back then, they said, I think my colors was, my first pair was purple. They were purple, but they were not like the soft purple. They were about as loud as my lips. So I got the purple ones, and then they allow you to change the molding of the hearing aids. I got the pink and yellow ones. So I was excited about it. But what I noticed was, as I got older, I started going to school. And as I started going to school, my peers, they didn't like it. I got teased for days. Like, it was just so many things people would say, because for one, they were so noticeable.
Yeah.
So I realized as I got older, I started to become a lot more ashamed on my hearing aid. So as a child, I would wear them at home and walk out the door and put them in my backpack. And my mom, she was, like I said, she was very making sure that she was on top of my hearing. So she made sure every teacher knew which, my hearing condition. So she made sure that I had to sit in the front of the classroom so that I can hear and I can pass in school. But I started taking the hearing aids out when I was in school because I didn't want to get teased anymore.
Yeah.
And I would put them in my backpack. After I put them in my backpack, it was crazy because my mom started paying attention, and she was just like, "Where are your hearing aids? They're not in the case." And some of the teachers were starting to call because not wearing the hearing aids, it did affect my grades because I couldn't hear when the teacher would speak or whatnot. So, as time was going, I realized, like, I started to become very ashamed of wearing something that God allowed to happen so that I can stand out and be confident about it. And as a child, I didn't recognize that.
Yeah. No.
So that's pretty much like what was the thing that made me unique as a child.
No, and I mean, that makes sense because as a child, all you really have context for is like A equaling B. When I wear these, people make fun of me. And so if I don't wear them, they won't make fun of me. And it's not like, maybe there is a kid out there that has those thoughts, but I think it is really difficult for a kid to wrap around the fact of like, well, I mean, these things are a gift. Like, your mom is doing a whole lot to make sure that you have those. Like, this is going to help your grades. I think it is that, like, it sounds like as a kid, you kind of hit that point of like, well, I don't want to be teased anymore. And so what was the turning point in that journey for you as you're, wearing them at home, but you're taking them out at school so that you won't be teased? So the first question is, did people stop teasing you after you took them off? And then the second is, what was that turning point in like you making the decision to either wear them again or release that shame?
I would say no. It happened all the way up to the time when I was in high school. And because it was like, I don't know, just like when, as you get older, the check game, that's how they used to call it.
Mm-hmm.
The check game got stronger. So it's almost like if you didn't have the confidence to brush off the things that people were saying and know who you were, you would crash. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much what happened. And I had this, I was trying to fit in. I was trying to fit in with my friends and, look like everybody else. So I didn't have that confidence during the time to say, girl, you got to do what you got to do and keep it moving. But I would say that it took until I got to high school, because within the years after doing that so many times, I was pretty much losing the wear on them, and I would have to constantly get more, or I would lose them after trying to hide them for so long. So there became a point in my life where I want to say this was a little after high school, and I didn't have them for a long period of time, and I realized how much I really needed them. But financially, I wasn't able to get them anymore because I was on Medicaid when I was a child. But as I got older, I didn't have that anymore. So financially, I couldn't afford these hearing aids. But I realized how much I really desire to be able to hear. So I would say the turning point for me would be when I got older and I realized how much it is a major necessity for me to be able to hear. And that's when I started to believe God that I will be able to hear.
Yeah. What I love about the story you just told is that there is this intersection of being a young girl that's being teased and about your hearing aids, and so you begin this process of hiding them and of being ashamed and not having that confidence. And even though you took the hearing aids out, the check game became present.
Yes.
And so the teasing didn't necessarily stop. It just morphed into something else to be teased about or to be checked on. But then in your adulthood, and what you mentioned when you were talking about your dad, is that there was this turning point for you where you started reconciling some things within you. And it sounds like at the time of reconciling that, hey, Dad can't heal this wound, also there was a healing in terms of, I actually do really want to hear. And so just all that to say that I think it's interesting that there's this intersection in your adulthood, that there's healing in multiple areas and concerning that pain of teasing and in hiding, but then also that wanting of a dad. It seems like at that turning point, there was just a lot of inner work going on for you.
Yes, it was. I could definitely say it was. I got saved in my early 20s, and I would say, like, I had some crazy faith back then. I had some crazy faith back then that really, sometimes, Facebook memory shows you, back then how you really, and some of those things really give me the courage to even believe God on another level now in my present. So a lot of that kind of happened during those years when I realized that, I serve a Heavenly Father who can do all things. He can make anything possible. And I realized how I had to stop pleasing people here on earth and get to a place where I looked up to God, and I started recognizing who it is that He called me to be. And obviously every area in my life is so different than anyone that I know. So it allowed me to grow in confidence and be bold in ways that stood out a lot as I started getting older. But I think now I've grown and I'm becoming so confident in everything that is different about me because, God knew. He already knew all of these things were going to happen. But He did also know my way of transitioning for them to become better. So I'm just like in a place where learning to accept the way God have called me to be, but trust Him for better. Because one thing that I realized is that no matter how broken we may be, how sick we may be, he said that we are healed by his stripes. So that scripture always stick out to me, because no matter where we are broken or where we hurt or whatnot, there's always a transformation to healing in those areas if we only believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I can definitely say in that turning point, I've grown in faith to know that God is able to do that exceedingly.
Mm-hmm. No, and I love what you just shared there. I think that what you said is like believing for more. I think is just really important for Christians to hear and to understand that we don't have to just be where we're at. And so as you're talking about this pivoting point, you've talked a little bit about that healing that happened for you and your dad's relationship. What was the healing journey for your hearing?
So I would say, remember I mentioned a point where I was like, you know what, God, I'm believing you for my full hearing. And I wasn't talking about hearing aids.
Mm-hmm.
I had got to a place where I realized that I needed the hearing aids, but I hated the feedback that it gives you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of side effects that hearing aid gives you. You collect a lot of wax in your ears. There's so much of stuff you have to go through to maintenance them and keep them up. And I just kind of got tired of that process or whatnot. And then too, talking on the phone. You can't talk on the phone, but technology have helped them evolve in so many ways now. But I realized, I was tired of that process. I was like, you know what, God, I'm believing you for full healing in my ears. Now, when I said it, I was just talking crazy, but at the same time, I was like, really like putting a demand on God, like, God, I'm believing you for this. And I wrote it down, and I just kept speaking it. And one day I went to a conference, and when I went to a conference, I want to say before this conference happened, I probably was believing God for this for like 3 years. 3 years before I attended this conference. And when I was at the conference, there was a apostle there, and he was on the stage, and he was asking, he said, I need all of the people who cannot hear to come to the stage. Now, I didn't even hear him say that. But because I was around my friends or whatnot, they was like, yeah, he's asking for, people who can't hear. So I was like, okay. And I went up there, and when I went up there, it was me and it was another lady up there. But the whole time I was up there, while he was steady talking, I just kept saying, God, I was praying in my own while he was up there just talking to her. But I was just praying, believing that God was going to use him for this manifestation, the manifested. And before I had the opportunity to go up, there was a lady up there. And the lady, I think she was deaf in one ear. And long story short, he prayed and he laid hands on her. And next thing you know, she was able to hear out of one of her ears. I was amazed. I was like, oh, and that just made me like really rejoice for her. But I was in such high expectation that God was going to do the same for me. And he did the same thing for me. And within a few minutes, when he let my hands go, he let his hands off of my ears, and he was whispering in my ear. Now, we was at a conference, and I don't know if you ever been to those revival conference. The noise is extremely high, music, people praising, and next thing you know, he was whispering in my ear while they was playing that. I heard every single thing he was saying. I think he did it like 3 times to be sure in both ears, and I was able to hear. I was like, oh my God. And it was so crazy because my friends, they was amazed to see the miracle, but they kept whispering like, hey, y'all can't hear me.
Yeah.
It was so silly. But it was just like, oh my God, God really did the thing. So, as I kept going along, I was able to hear much more than what I was normally able to hear, but it wasn't the full deliverance. Mm-hmm. But I believe that it was enough for God to show up, to show me I still can do this, you know?
Yeah.
So I held on to that. Now, there was a time when after this conference, my church, we were Impact Church then. We went to Peru, and we were on the mission field.
Mm-hmm.
When we were on the mission field, we were praying and believing God for the people out there. But they set us up in different groups. So every day during the week on the field, they each group had to come and tell what they saw God do. So people would come in with miracles every single day, but me and my group, we didn't see miracles. We didn't see anything. We were like, God. And it's like sometimes some of them were starting to get discouraged, but I was like, God, we did not come all the way to Peru not to see you move. So on the last day on the field, they told us, they said, we're going to go out. There was like a big conference, and they were trying to get people to come out to the conference. So they said they wanted us to go out and pass out the flyers on the field so people can come to the church conference. And while we were out there passing it out, it was just something in my spirit saying, we're out here to do more than pass out flyers. So I was like, me and my partner, what we did was we actually went to the side and we prayed. We asked the Holy Spirit to lead us while we were passing out the flyers. So while we were passing out the flyers, it's like we knew we was on our assignment. And we went out there, and when we went out there, we went to 3 different groups. The second group wasn't a group. It was just a man. He looked like he was about 70 years old. And he said he was down there. He didn't talk much. He didn't speak English. So we had to get the translator to help us when we was talking to him. So we gave him the flyer, and because he didn't talk to us, we went to the next group. But it was something in my spirit kept saying, go back to this man. So when we went back, I was like, come on, let's go back over there to this man. We went back to the man, and we started talking to him some more. And it was so crazy because I can remember it like it was yesterday. The translator, she was just like, he said that he can't hear in neither one of his ears. And I was like, oh my God, like that was just like, oh my goodness. And it touched my heart because my partner, I had just told her my ear story, so she didn't even know. And she's like, Leah, he can't hear. So I just prayed for him and just was believing God for his divine healing and asking that God would increase the sound in his ears, just like the man did before me, for my own ears. I was believing for this God as if it was my own ears. Mm-hmm. And the moment I stopped praying, the man started rejoicing, and we was looking like, are you serious? And so the translator, she kept talking to him, and he was speaking back to her about what she was saying. Because before he was like not able to, really communicate with us because he couldn't hear. And then he ended up coming out saying he was not able to hear since he was a baby.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
He was in tears. He went from this sad man on the side, just sitting down there, to getting up, and he was just so happy. He kept thanking God. I was just like, God, we needed to see that miracle. Like, that miracle was beyond him. Like, I think we needed to see that too, as believers, to know that, he is still alive. Like, what are we believing? What are we not believing for that we can possibly believe for? So that is pretty much like my faith story with my hearing. And I'm still believing God for my hearing. I still pray over my hearing to this day. And I'm just believing that God is going to still heal my ears.
Yeah. What I love about what you're saying is just how dynamic any kind of relationship is with God, of our stories really like drive us towards something. Does that make sense? And so for you, all throughout your story, especially at that turning point, there has been this bold faith and that has been confirmed for you. And when I think of just even with my story, like there is that boldness, but it's in the direction of perseverance because of the way that like the things that I've been through. So I love how in our relationship with God and in our relationships that it is so like when we all come together and we all share our stories, it is like a connection point of, wow, like your faith story has trust and healing and miracles written all over it, whereas mine would have, you know, perseverance and boldness. Does that make sense? So I just love like just hearing from you about the things you've experienced and those turning points and those big moments and how that's informed who you're becoming. And then I'm just, even as I'm in your presence now, of seeing that confidence that has been built in you. Because that was what you mentioned before, is like when you look back, you recognize that it was because of lack of confidence. And so thank you so much for sharing that. That is, I love that. Thank you.
God be the glory. Yes. I'll just say for anyone who struggle with confidence, I always tell people, let your confidence be built in God and He will do the rest. I've tried to build my confidence in things, but one thing that I realized after losing my business, it was like I had a business and I built my confidence in my money, in my business, in what I had. But there was a point where God kind of stripped me naked from all of that. And what I realized was that my confidence was built in all of the wrong things. But when you have an unshakable confidence built in the Lord Jesus Christ, what happens is no matter what comes, what goes, who accepts, who rejects, you still stand. You're still able to get up every day and be who you are because you know who you are in Him. And that is like the best confidence to have ever in this time.
No, and I love that. There's like an analogy that I've come across in counseling that if you're constantly in that battle with confidence, it's like you're playing chess. And so for every negative thing, then you have to move. And so the black pieces are the negative and the white pieces are the positive. You have to keep, it's a never ending game because you're rooting, like essentially you're rooting your confidence in things that are fleeting. Just like what you were talking about of it being connected to your business or being connected with, like I can relate to what you're saying about teenage years, connected to the way you look or connected to who you're friends with. Those things are very fleeting. And so when your confidence is attached to things that are just going to leave, then yes, of course it's going to crumble. Yes, of course it's going to be those things. And what I'm hearing you say is, especially for people of faith, to just be mindful of the fact that faith informs your confidence, not connecting it to those things that are probably going to go away. And so what the thing I have for you, the question I have for you, I don't have a thing for you, I have a question. The question I have for you is, as you've looked at your story and as you're still living out your story, how has what you've experienced informed how you are mentoring and caring for the people around you?
I feel as though one thing I realize is that I go through a lot of hard things. I think we all do. But I think what keeps me is to remember that nothing you go through is for you alone. I think understanding that it's almost like a bulldozer. You know, the bulldozer has to really push it really hard, the snow, just to get it out of the place so that the ones behind them can just easily go through. That's how I look at my life, because I realize that sometimes I can get in a hard space, and I'm like, God, why am I here? Why am I going through this? And it constantly reminds me, you're not going through this alone. You're going through this with him so that he can show you how to navigate through it so you can have someone else. And the more and more I connect with people and, minister to other people and listen to, things that they have going on, it's just be like, okay, God, now I see why I had to go through what I had to go through, because it was only so that he can get the glory out of it all. And I think that's what helps me in my own stories and, walking my own faith walk. I tell myself every day when I get up, girl, you can't quit, because somebody is waiting on you to get through this so that you can help them through that. And that's like my everyday, thing I have to tell myself. If you're gonna stop and take a break, but don't rest there for too long. You gotta keep moving. But there are times where God calls us to be still, and I think those are important too, because then that's when God can really bring restoration and, can heal us in every area that he needs us. And this pandemic has definitely showed us all about being still, right? So, but, even in the midst of that, he still is doing great things in the midst of these hard times that we are going through.
Yeah. No, I love that. I completely agree with you there. I think I didn't recognize it at the time, but I recognize that the hardships have shaped me into the person that I am now. And because of what I've experienced, I can empathize with people on a different level. And I don't feel like it gives a one up, but I think that the things that we experience opens up the doors to being able to help people in a different way.
Yes.
And so there's things that you can speak to. And so if there's a young girl or a young boy who's experiencing hearing loss and they feel down about wearing their hearing aids, there's things that you can speak to that I can't. I could try, but I think that having someone that has gone before that can say, hey, let's not root our confidence in what these kids are saying is completely, because then you have that insight of like, and I did that. And was what happened. And so I think that that's the beauty of living our stories. But then as you use that awesome analogy of bulldozing that snow, because there's people coming behind you. There's things that you can offer based off of what you've experienced. And so I love that. I love that you brought that up. I think I do want you to talk a little bit about how people can follow you. You were telling me about the thing that you do called Texture Thursdays. And so what is that, and where can people watch that if they want to hear more from you?
Okay. So I just started Texture Talk Thursdays. It is every first and third Thursday of the month. And it's always aired on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. You can find them all under my name, Alia Freeman. And what the shows are is they're talk shows. I talk about life beyond the chair. One thing about coming to get service from me in the salon is me and my clients, we talk about everything from hair to life to business. And I started to, expand. God gave me the vision to expand the show to allow people to gain perspective in all of those areas. So that one thing I realized is that we as the people, we become stuck. Most of the time we're stuck in the way we think about things. So the shows kind of give people perspective about life situation, business situation. There's a lot of people that are trying to start things or develop things, and I give a lot of insight on how you can be better in the workplace, how you can live for Christ, how you can embrace who you are naturally, however that looks like, and also provide techniques, different beauty techniques, or whatnot, and how whatever else God gives me. But it's a really exciting show, and it's just a way to connect with people in this time, to give them insight on how to do life in the pandemic.
Yeah. No, I love that you've taken that confidence that you have now and made something. I love that. That is great. And I'm really excited about actually watching what you said, that like your texture talks, because I think that those are great. And I think that that's too the encouragement, is that even if you've been neglected in any way, even if things have been hard, that there is something on the other side, and it might not be right now. Because like, as you said, maybe you're in a rest period, maybe you're in healing period, maybe you're in go period, and it's not time. But either way, there's something on the other side of it. And just kind of what you've demonstrated is that process. I wish growth was a straight trajectory, but it's oftentimes a lot of like going, stopping, and then we go backwards a little bit, and then we go again, and then we go back. And it's like a lot of that. And I wish it wasn't, but it is. But I think that that's the beauty of kind of what you've shared, even in your story of, you received healing in your hearing, you received healing in the relationship with your father, and it's still evolving. And you're healing in your hearing, it's still evolving too. And out of that, you talked briefly about having a business and it not having the business anymore, and your confidence being rooted in that. And now here you are making these talks that address a lot of areas that you can uniquely speak to. And so I want to commend you for that, because I think that is a beautiful use of your growth, to being able to pass it backwards.
I'm gonna admit it was not easy, but they're definitely growing pains. Sometimes you just gotta kind of put your emotions aside, although you may be feeling the way you feel about things, but really asking God, what is he saying? What is it that he wants you to know so that you can be whole in him? Everything works together for your good. And I realized, not having my father in my life, that worked together for my good. I was able to encourage other young girls of why it's important to have your father. I think sometimes women can kind of get stuck in the area of, my father wasn't in my life, I don't need him, and I think that can be a downfall, because we become a little too independent. And it's like learning how to, I would say, learning how to let a man lead was something that is really, you learn from first fatherhood. And it's your heavenly father and your natural father as well. Learning how to love your father, your heavenly father, and your earthly father can definitely mature us as a woman when it's time to become a wife. So I would say, really explaining that to young women, to not give up on your father. Although he's not in your life, God can still bring it back 180, can turn it around and let it work together for your good. So, really helping, praying, and ministering young women, young girls on, learning how to meet their fathers where they are and let God do what he wants to do in them through the relationship.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
No problem.
And so we end every podcast with a challenge. And so what would your challenge be to our listeners?
That's a good one. Okay. So my challenge to every listener is to grab a paper And I want you to believe God for the most craziest thing ever. I challenge your faith.
Yeah.
I challenge you to believe God for something that you never thought that He could possibly do.
Thank you.
I want to actually hear about the things God did. I don't care how long it takes for Him to manifest it. But, whatever you wrote down, I'll be praying on your behalf and believing that God will show up mightily and highly and just be who He is in your life. But I challenge your faith to grow. And I pray that I have encouraged all of the listeners to elevate in faith and allow God to heal them in every way they need to be healed.
No, well, you've encouraged me. And so that is a blessing in and of itself. So thank you for coming. I really appreciate you sharing your story. I'm always honored when people are willing to share their hearts. And so I really appreciate you coming and doing that.
Thank you for having me.
Well, of course. All right, listeners, we'll catch you next time. Bye.